Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I am Sam. I'm an artist, illustrator and knitting designer based in the Republic of Ireland. You can find me around the internet looking for Irish Pharma art. I have of course an Instagram account, a separate Instagram account dedicated to my artworks. I do have an Etsy shop in which I sell my paintings, and I'm currently running a sale, so be sure to check it out. A Facebook page, a Twitter account, a Ravelry page, basically everything. Look for Irish Farm Art and all the links are below in the description as well. If you are new to my channel, thank you so much for coming by. This is my little corner of the internet in which I try to show you what I'm crafting about, what I'm knitting, what I'm making, trying to follow the classic knitting podcast schedule, talking about my finished works, works in progress, acquisitions, and really anything that is happening in my crafty life. And I try always to make it through the lens of myself being an artist. And if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. Really, all your comments from my last video are so heartwarming and really means a lot to me. So thank you so much. It's currently about 5:30 in the morning and I'm keeping my voice quite low because my neighbors upstairs might think I'm completely crazy filming a video at this time of the day, but I have an extraordinarily busy day today and I need to crank on, so I really hope to be able to film this video, edit it, put it on the internet before I start my working day. So without any further ado, like they say on these channels, grab your cup of coffee or tea and let's crank on. I'm currently on my second cup of coffee and I fear it's something new that I found through another podcast actually. It's a vanilla latte by Nescafe. It's kind of an instant coffee, something like that. It comes in little packets, mono-dose, and you just put hot water and it's the most beautiful thing ever. My Italian compatriot would probably excuse me if I'm not making myself another espresso, but I'm obsessed with that. Anyway, let's start with the finished works. I don't know if you can spot it, but I am wearing my first finished work, which is of course this little pride badge here. This is a tiny little accessory that I came up with. It's quite, if I can say that myself, a clever construction. I built it knitting in the round using the magic loop technique with a combination of really any scrap of sock yarn, and I liked to make the pride flag colors. This because we are in June, of course, and June is Pride month, and I know that this community is gloriously colored with all the pride colors, so I really wanted to give something back to the community and as well raise a little bit of an awareness, or kind of give some tools to show our beautiful colors through our craft, which is knitting in this case. I came up with this tiny rainbow pattern, I would say a week ago or something like that, and soon after receiving a huge amount of positive feedback, which was for me mind-blowing, I actually made all the spectrum of pride color flags, and I came up with a tiny little collection of badges with all the color of pride. I have so many here, I don't even know how I can hold them on. And yeah, even my little teddy bear is wearing one. He is wearing the transgender color. Again, the feedback is being amazing and I'm really, really happy. The pattern is for free in my Ravelry shop. I originally thought to charge a small fee and perhaps donate those money to any LGBTQA plus charity that operates here in Ireland, and I know that I do desperately need our support and help. But at the same time, I thought that I am not quite entitled to take money from something that belongs to all of our community. So giving this pattern for free, it's a sort of giving back to the community, but as well appropriating the community with another tool to make all the LGBT plus color, I would say, more normal, or just another possibility for us all to support the community. You can find a pattern for free in my Ravelry shop. I did send out an update to the pattern because we found a very small error in the very final stitch count, but everybody have been updated, so happy days. I really, really hope you could make one of these that takes nothing, just a handful of scrap of yarns, not really, I would say 20 meters, it's just a really nothing. And the construction is quite clever, once again, if I can say so myself. On the back of these pins, I put a pin backing and all the instructions are in the pattern. Although afterwards I was contacted by a friend of mine asking if I could turn this into earrings. They are very dainty, very small, and they would look amazing as a little earpiece, so I kind of need to find a hook or something to attach this to a ear pin backing hook. I don't know the terminology of that. And as well, they can be amazing as pendant or little buttons. Anyway, they are quite cute, quite dainty, and I'm looking forward to seeing your projects. There's already a few on the Ravelry page, which is absolutely great. And yeah, so this was my finished work, a tiny little pride collection of badges. My second finished work is a pair of socks. I think I showed this in my previous podcast as well, but they are finally finished and the pattern is published on my Ravelry shop. This, once again, is part of my collection of the socks that may evolve in something more related or inspired by the beautiful buildings that are constructed or built facing the Grand Canal in Venice. Venice is the city that I'm from. I'm not from Venice, but just from outside Venice. Venice is the capital of the region of Italy which I'm from, and I really wanted to dedicate this little collection to all the beautiful buildings that over the centuries families have built over facing the canal, which is the main artery, the main road in brackets for traffic and commerce in the city, and they are absolutely stunning. If you have the chance to go and visit Venice, I warmly recommend you a trip by boat, taking one of those little steam ferries, or of course a gondola, which is always an experience, and just navigate and sail to the Grand Canal and have a look at all those massive, beautiful, stunning buildings that are facing the water. They are facing the water because back then the families wanted to show their wealth, their power, with massive artworks, which was something that was quite useful and quite a common thing back in the days when Venice was a big republic. Venice is basically a giant shopping window, or that's probably not right to say, but it's a sort of a showcase city. This because when the Republic was in power, when the Republic of Venice was in power, Venice was basically the door through the Republic. The Republic extended a lot over the northeast part of Italy and over the Adriatic Sea down towards Istria, and Cyprus was part of Venice as well. Uh, the city was sort of a gate through the Republic, and people, when they arrived to Venice, they could see just the splendor and gold and artworks everywhere, and in such an interesting way because everything is built on the top of the water at sea level. So we have now all this massive array of artworks and stunning architecture that once was meant to attract commerce, to attract tourists, to attract people. And somehow it does that still, attract tourists and people, and everybody is super fascinated when they first come to the city, when they get off the train station or a boat. It's just breathtaking. And so was the plan back in the old Venetian times, to surprise people. The same Basilica of San Marco that you probably know as the typical postcard from Venice wasn't the center of the power of the church there, although it's the biggest basilica, the biggest church in the city. And if you go in any other Italian city, the biggest church is usually the center of the power of the local church. But it's not for San Marco. San Marco, it's built as a state church. It's built once again to impress people coming into Venice. It's right at the front of the Dogana, so the first point that you meet when you come into Venice by boat. And it's basically a big hug of the city from the sea. The center of the power of the church was in another church or in another basilica nearby San Marco, but it's not as splendid and as gorgeously decorated as San Marco is. This is just to tell you how different it was, the approach to showing off the city, basically. This sock is inspired by one of these palaces that was back in the day built to impress people. And currently we call this palace, or the palace is known as Palazzo Bauer or Bauer building. It's not what you would expect in the city. There are two parts of this building. One is the ancient part of the building that is facing the Canal Grande, the Grand Canal, which is a big 18th century building. There's nothing special about that, although it's stunning and is gorgeously decorated as well. But the other part of the building, which is not facing the canal, but is facing a campo. Campo, by the way, it's the Venetian for square. The only square called square or piazza in Venice is Piazza San Marco, while every other square is called campo. Anyway, so I'm giving you all these tips. Now, when you go to Venice, you'll be super familiar and you know everything. But the part that is facing this campo is a modern build. Built, I suppose, in the later part of the 1900s. It's a square building, square box with this little ridge type of pattern made out of glass, which is absolutely beautiful. It's a really modern building that clashes a lot with the older part of the building and as well with all the other structures that are facing that little campo. It's absolutely stunning and I really love that building. It's currently, I suppose, an hotel and is still owned by the Bauer family. And yeah, that's basically it about the history piece of this sock. This sock is construction from the cuff and down with circular needles or DPNs. That doesn't really matter. In my patterns I always give the two possibilities, so it's quite clearly explained. The heel as well is my great-grandmother construction that for now you all know. It's all work in the round apart from a little piece of the heel turn, but that wouldn't disrupt your color work. The entire heel is work in color work, and I decided to keep contrasting color for the heel turn and the gusset, so to show off a little bit of this particular construction. It's super easy. I don't know if we have other patterns that adopt this heel construction, or if it was my great-grandmother kind of invention, but it was the way she used to knit socks. I have quite a few pair of socks that she knitted for me when she was here with us, and I kind of went there and reconstructed the heel construction from the sock itself. So it was quite an interesting type of work, and I really enjoyed it very much, also because that meant I could keep the memory of an art and a craft that my great-grandmother was very fond of. She really wasn't a professional knitter, or she really didn't pay much attention about her knitting. She wasn't really tidy, but she loved to knit, and yeah, it's a nice big memory. My mom has a shawl that my great-grandmother knitted. Is a texture shawl. When I go back to Italy, I'll make sure to take some pictures and perhaps reconstruct that as well. It's massive. It's full of mistakes, stitches that are lost and dropped, and the ribbing is not perfect, but that was my great-grandmother. She just enjoyed the process, and she probably was knitting while chatting with her friends or with the family, so that wasn't really a thing for her. But yeah, you can find these socks in my Ravelry store as well. The yarn that I use is if I'm right, it's Coop Knit Sock Here, which is a 75-25 merino and nylon. It's a little thinner than my regular sock yarn, therefore I went down a needle size for these socks. And I also gave a little bit of more length on the leg part as well. This because this is my 7th pair of socks in this collection of Venetian socks, and I found that I tend to knit them with a quite short leg, which is great for speediness and getting the pattern out, but is not great for wearing. I prefer my socks being very tall or quite taller onto my cuff. And yeah, so that's a little bit of a modification I made from my regular patterns. What else to say on this? Nothing really. It's full-on color work. It's super easy to follow. When you memorize the pattern that it is, flies away. The heel, it's work within the color work, as I mentioned, and you basically, for the heel, increase a series of numbers of stitches to get the gussets done, and then you decrease the same number of stitches in the different part for the heel turn. That's basically it. Nothing complicated about that. The next finish work is another pair of socks. These are the Marble Ridge by Kate Atherley. I think I called her Katie in my previous video. Really sorry. It's a very popular pattern. I got this through my How to Knit Socks book or something like that. I'm going to put the links below in the description so you can find this pattern as well. I was really craving a textured sock, and as you can see, we have definitely texture here. Once again, as per my previous socks, I decided to go a little longer with the leg part of the sock, this to make them a little bit more uh, suitable for everyday wearing. And yeah, there's nothing magic with the pattern. I really enjoyed the first sock. I really struggled with the second one. This because it's when I come up with my pattern, I knit one sock. I write down the pattern. I send it to test knits and tech editors, and then I go back and I knit the second sock in order to check that the pattern is actually done and is perfect. So there's a lot of interest in knitting the second sock. It's like starting a new project. Following someone else's pattern, I found that quite difficult to get to knit the second sock, especially because the leg is so long and it's so slow to knit up. But I really like the end result. Originally I wanted to knit this using a West Yorkshire spinner speckled type of yarn with color changes and everything, but I found myself not enjoying the result there. The yarn, it's so beautiful that I think would shine better with a more of a vanilla type of sock without any texture on it, rather than this type of ridges that we create here with a series of purl and knits all around the sock. So I unraveled it and I started again, and this time using every single scrap of sock yarn that I had in my stash. Currently have a big bag of ends and little 20-15 grams balls of yarn. So I was like, okay, I lost completely interest in this sock and in knitting this, so I'm gonna do my best, at least, to get rid of some very valuable yarn, but that is not enough to make an entire pair of socks or make anything else. So this is the result, and I got their brother as well, which is, of course, the ends are not knitted in. And as you can see out of the sock blocker, it's a really stretched pattern type of thing, which I really enjoy very much, which means that once it's on the foot and on the leg, it's very easy to put into shoes and use as an everyday sock. Can't wait to try this. Unfortunately, the weather is turning, so we have very warm weather coming up, and woolly socks are probably going to be useful later on in the year. But I'm making so many that I don't really mind. Next winter I will have a full-on closet with hand-knitted socks, which is amazing. So here it is, my third finish object, the Marble Ridge sock by Kate Utterly. And finally, lastly, it's a Christmas decoration, Christmas ball, made with a colorwork. Once again, I'm quite obsessed with stranded colorwork. It's probably kind of my thing in the knitting world. But yeah, this is a pattern that I come up with, or I came up with. It's a kind of an original, different way of constructing a spherical shape using circular work or knitting in the round, and I am trying to make 24 of these things for an hypothetical calendar, advent calendar over in December this year. So far I have knitted 11, which is a lot, but it's not that many for a calendar. I probably would be able to knit the remaining balls in, I don't know, a couple of days. They are super quick and super easy, and I find myself coming up with the designs quite quickly as well. The thing is that I lost a little bit of mojo on knitting Christmas decoration. This because we are approaching the middle of the summer, for one, and second, I was hoping to get a little bit of a feedback from some yarn companies or publications that to help me to get this pattern out there, and perhaps create a little kit with the yarn and the 24 patterns in order to make an actual advent calendar. This hasn't happened yet, but the fact that it's very weird to say this, to be honest, but yeah, I've been contacting editors and yarn companies quite a bit, and I'm not really receiving much of a feedback, so my mojo kind of went, and yeah, but it's still a very nice personal project, and I will definitely make it by hopefully before December, and if it's not published properly with a company or someone that can help me doing that, I will definitely write up the pattern and perhaps create a little series of videos or put it on my Ravelry page. These are of course inspired by the Arne and Carlos Christmas balls, but the construction is completely different, and the color work as well has a different twist. Rather than being 100% Nordic type of style, I brought a little bit of my Irish culture and as well my Italian upbringings. So yeah, here you have it, my last finished work. Now let's talk about works in progress, and I have many of those. The first one being this lovely cable situation, which is the sweater number 15 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. So, as I mentioned before, I tried making or knitting cables many times, and the latest iteration was a pattern from Brooklyn Tweed, was the Svensson sweater. I started it, I found myself struggling all the way through, and I never finished. I unraveled it, I got back the yarn, and I make something else. This because the pattern was extremely difficult to follow. Nothing to take from Brooklyn Tweed patterns. They are probably amazing if you are an expert knitter or expert cable knitter. I am not, and I probably jumped too high up my waist rather than starting with something more simple. But at the same time, I was craving really a cable sweater. I think it's a great staple in everybody's wardrobe, especially if you live in Ireland. It reminds me a little tiny bit of our beautiful Aran jumpers. So I found this pattern from My Favorite Things Knitwear, and it looked simple enough. Simple being there's only one type of cable, and simple being there is a part that you knit in the round rather than having to knit in pieces and then sew on the pieces together. So I am at the point that I have joined the back and the front in the round, and I'm just knitting in the round all the length down my waist. Then I will pick up for the collar piece and the sleeves. In the pattern, the sleeves are very loose and puffy. I intend to figure out how I can decrease the sleeves in order to make them like a regular sleeve with a cuff quite fitting as well. The body itself is quite fitted to me. There's no much a positive ease. I am following currently the second size, which is for a very small chest, but on the size, and please go on the pattern, this is a pattern for sale, so I can't really give out too much information, but from the sizing, we do have 25 to 35 centimeters of positive ease. So doing my calculation, I figure out the second one is probably the right size for my liking and for what fits me. So far, so good. If you have any suggestions for me in order to get the sleeve to fit, if you needed this before, let me know. The armhole here is quite large, so goes quite low. So I probably will end up cutting down a little bit of the armhole as well. We'll see. I have no idea. So far, I'm enjoying very, very much the construction and the work itself. On my latest acquisition, I acquired this cable needle. I don't know if you can see it well. It's from Clover. It's a hook type of needle, so basically you pick up the stitches from the shorter side and you knit from the longer side. I was recommended this on my comments from you guys, so many of you, and it actually changes your life. As soon as this arrives, I stumbled across a video on YouTube, on my recommended video, on how to make cables without a cable needle. So I watched it, I learned it, and I don't need this anymore. This can go in the bin because knitting without cable needle is actually the way to go. So easy and simple. You don't need any spare needles or twisting your yarn in order to get everything done, and stepping up from your couch to find a cable needle is just a very easy way to go, and so much more enjoyable for me as well. But if I have to knit maybe larger cables, traveling cables, something complicated, definitely this is the way to go, rather than those kind of squiggly, straight-ish needles. This stays there when you drop your stitches and doesn't go anywhere, so it's very, very, very clever, and only cost a couple of euros. So I warmly recommend this. The wool that I'm using for this sweater is this cone of yarn from Woolly Knits. This is the Misty Grey color. It's a sort of two-tone color. I absolutely think you can't see from here, but please go check the website. This is amazing, and all the links are below again. I'm not sponsored by them or by any other, although I really, really wish someone would sponsor me. But the particularity of this yarn is that it's plied with two different tones of yarn. One is a dark grey and the other one is a pinkish grey, which is quite interesting, and together makes the most beautiful muted grey color ever, and I'm really enjoying the way this knits up in the fabric. I absolutely love this color. I am currently on the 200 grams mark for this sweater. I don't think I'm gonna finish the cone, but I will make definitely a big dent in this cone as well. This is a fingering weight 100% super soft wool, I would say. And I got this from Woolly Knits, which is a British website. The yarn is quite on the, I wouldn't say inexpensive side, but it's cheapish. And you get cones for 300-500 grams, which is a huge amount of yarn. And you can definitely make a couple of jumpers or accessories out of a cone, so a good investment. The thing is that living outside the United Kingdom, the import taxes and the shipping is an extortion. So many of you contacted me on Instagram and here as well on YouTube, asking where I got these cones of yarns. And I came up with a couple of recommendations. especially for people that are living overseas. You can find these yarns in basically three big shops. There is Woolinits, which sells these cones in a large array of different type of yarns and colors. Once again, the cost of the yarn is quite cheap, but you have to add the shipping and import fees. As well, from the UK, we have JC Rennie or Knit Rennie, which sells similar cones. They are a little bit more rustic, as 100% British super soft wool. They're great. They are drenched in spinning oil. So when you knit up with them, you will feel that the yarn is quite greasy and quite sticky. But then when you wash your garment, the yarn magically blooms, loses all the spinning oils, and become the most soft and amazing wool ever. Those cones, if I recall correctly, are a little larger, and yeah, you will never finish them. The third one, which is the option that I am recommending all the European viewers and eventually American viewers or people that live overseas, is Holstgarn, which is a Danish company that sells massive super soft wool cones as well, similar to JC Rennie and similar to these ones too. I find that for the European Union the shipping price is so much lower and you don't have any import fees. The cost of the cones, though, are a little bit higher than Woolinits, but nothing compare with shipping and import fees. So, hope you got a cone or two of yarn. It's a great way to knit up something and have a huge amount of yarn without breaking the bank. The next work in progress is a big bundle of mess. This is my mom's jumper. She knitted a jumper with this color work when she was young, and I basically retraced the pattern, and every couple of weeks, as you know if you're following this channel, I add a band of color work. And this time is this lovely kind of Selbu rose on the bottom here. Every colorwork band or every motif is worked with 3 strands of yarn, which is mind-boggling to me how my mother could figure that out without any pattern. But yeah, so far so good. I am working on is growing. It's growing slowly but surely, and I don't know if I love the color combination, but this was more or less the original color of the jumper, so I wanted to stick to that. I am going to continue knitting on this on the coming weeks. Pattern wise is done. I don't need to draft down any pattern now. It's just a matter to repeating this 3 different pieces of color work over and over again, and on the sleeves as well. Now, I don't know if I want to repeat the patterns on the sleeves or if that will make it a little bit too much busy, but yeah, what do you think? I know that a lot of people don't like this color combination. I don't know if I love it myself, but I think it's quite a different style. It reminds me, of course, of the 80s when my mom would have been kind of a teenager and knit this up. And yeah, that's the work in progress on this jumper. I'm using, of course, some cotton light from Drops, which is a combination of cotton and nylon, which makes a very soft but really light type of garment. Originally I wanted to get this done by the summer, but this is not gonna work. It's a huge amount of work, and on the top of the color work I decided to turn this into a raglan. So I had to figure out the stitch counts, the creases, the short rows, all those beautiful things. My mom was more clever, and when she knitted this up, she decided to go for a drop sleeve type of construction, and as well knitting back and forth, back and front, and then adding the sleeves. So yeah, quite a different, quite challenging, but I'm pleased that at least it's growing slowly, but it's growing. And then finally, I think, and I'm looking here because I have works everywhere basically, I think we have our last work in progress, which is another jumper. So, the history behind this jumper. You have seen in my previous video, and if you haven't, go check it out, that I did make something similar using some Holstgarn yarn with this same pattern colorwork design on the yoke of the previous jumper. I decided that it wasn't fitting my body or my liking, so I cut through the front, I sticked it, and I knitted up a collar band and a bottom band to turn that into a lovely cardigan, which was great, as much as someone saw it and wanted it. So now I gave that away, so I didn't keep it and I didn't take care of having any picture, but I'm gonna ask so as well. I might put some pictures here if I manage to get them. If I don't, I'm reknitting this up. This time though, I wanted really to stick to my starting convention, a starting project of making a fitting jumper. In a specific case, a raglan jumper, because I think it's one of the best shape that fit my bodies. I really like very much the construction of the shoulders, how the yoke drops on my chest, and how it fits anyway. So to do so, I started from the top this time and down, knitting up the number of stitches that I know can fit my body. Over the years, I kind of developed this kind of theory that depending on what type of yarn, if I'm using decay rather than fingering, I have, and I know that I have a number of stitches that using a specific number of needle can fit my body quite well. So I did that. I put down the number of stitches for the collar, I knitted down the raglan, this time in creases, and then started the color work and played around a little bit with color work and the and color combination, and yeah, and so I got the body done, and I have started one of the sleeves as well, the very beginning of the sleeve. This is knitted up in Cascade 220. I'm not focusing, am I? Well, this knit is knitted up in Cascade 220 super wash wool, which is not my favorite yarn. If you recall, I had a terrible incident with a bubble sweater that I knitted in this yarn, which got completely destroyed in the washing machine. Silly me, thinking it was super wash, I put it in the washing machine with a regular washing, and sweater got completely ruined. So to circumvent and to avoid that type of situation again, I decided to go down with the gauge and knit everything at a tighter gauge. And as well being mindful that all the stitches are tight enough in order to get the yarn to kind of stick together, although it doesn't stick together, but you get the gist of the situation. I knitted the entire body following all the tricks that I learned from my previous jumpers, adding German short rows at the beginning of the neck as well as in the middle of the yoke and as well at the very back of the bottom band, of the waistband. This because it gives a little bit of a slope towards the back of your back, and yeah, it fits so much better. And as well, I tapered the body too, so that it can give me a little bit of a shape there as well. So far so good. I am going to draft the pattern as soon as this is finished and send it to my tech editor. Now, this is knitted in my size. There's a tiny bit of positive ease to noise at all, and I need to get a few more sizes. So this is something for sure that I need to work out with my tech editor if they can do that for me, but I really would love to understand how to do that myself so that I can bring a kind of a finished product all the way to my tech editor and then test knitters. I have no idea how to do that. I did it before with another garment that I designed, but that was so much simpler construction, and the stitch count basically did go up or down following the gauge, nothing crazy. In this case though, we do have increases, decreases, we do have short rows and all that shebang. I am not quite sure how to number up, if there is, I don't know, a spreadsheet that you can just fill in and you get all the sizes, or if it's a piece of mathematical count that you really need to go and make up yourself. Or even if the tech editors would do that for you. I have no idea. If you have any recommendation, if you are a designer yourself and you kind of know how to navigate this, please comment below. I really want to learn a little bit about grading and pattern grading. As well as I think this is such a stunning piece of color work and it fits so well, at least the body, that I really want to make it as more size inclusive as possible. So yeah, here you have it, my last work in progress. That was a lot of talking. I have no idea how much time I've been recording for, and I really hope this is not too long. I'm looking at my clock, here is 8 o'clock, so I basically have another hour to record and edit this video. But yeah, you're not here for my complaining about work-life balance, but for the knitting. So let's go into the latest part of my work, which is acquisitions. And the first thing that I acquired, of course, is the hooky U-shape cable needle. This comes from Clover. It's yeah, really clever construction for a cable needle. I don't know why I didn't try this before, to be honest. They are made out of plastic and they come in a few different sizes just for a couple of euros, so really a good investment. Talking about needles, I got a few very short DPNs. These are 15 centimeters, and if you compare with another of my regular DPNs, this is a 20 centimeter, they are quite smaller. But I found that they work really great for sock knitting or knitting the Christmas balls, stuff like that needs a little bit of a small dainty type of work. I got two sizes, a 2mm and a 2.25, which are currently the sizes that I use the most, both for sock and for other stuff. These are from Pony, which is a brand that I despised for the much part of my knitting life. The first touch I got of pony was with cable needles. You know those gray cable needles that everybody and their dogs have and started with as well? I think they are a big disgrace and they are not useful at all. If you start using cables, please don't buy ponies or don't buy those massive sets of cable needles from Amazon that are super cheap but will make your work a struggle, and you won't enjoy knitting with cables and you won't learn knitting with cables. I would rather recommend some Knit Pro or Knitter's Pride cable needles. They are the same price range, but they are so much better quality, and the point is that the cable doesn't get on your way but helps you to do your job. So yeah, decide to do some research if you start with that. Anyway, I despised pony, so I never got anything out of pony. Whenever I saw that something was made from them, I just left it and ran away like it was plague. But I got this for a mistake probably, or because I didn't check, or because they were the only needles available on their website. On the website I bought this series of needles, and I probably needed a couple of euros to make the free shipping mark, so here we go. A pleasant surprise. They are great to knit with, and the size is just beautiful. And as well, price point, they cost nothing. So well done, pony, you got back into my glories. So on that same website, I finally got my hand on some light lopi. This is 100% wool, 50 grams, 100 meters. I'm reading because I have no idea about ounces and yards, but it's 1.75 ounces by 109 yards. This is a very rough DK-ish wool that is very loosely plied. I know that you probably, if you are watching this, you know about light lopi. This is from Iceland, and it's one of the most famous wools for colorwork knitting and stuff like that. I got a jumper quantity on this gorgeous blue color, and I was thinking to make another cable sweater out of this. Now, looking around the internet, I found that 99.9% of the times this has been used for colorwork. So I am now finding myself kind of contemplating to buy a few more contrasting colors. Sorry, my camera decided to die. Anyway, I'm thinking of buying a contrasting color. Although, I don't know, the yarn is very warm, you can tell from touching the bowl. It's very rough. So I think color work will be a sort of a labor of love / a nightmare, if you know what I mean, because I'm sure the yarn will tend to stick together quite well and make your knitting experience quite difficult. And the fact that this is a thicker yarn, it's a DK-ish yarn, I feel layering different colors will make a very big and dense pattern. So I don't know if it's something that I like in my wardrobe. I knitted before using DK a colorwork. The yarn that I used was Drops Charisma, 100% wool as well, which is considering a much lighter yarn than this. And I didn't like the result, or I liked the result, but I didn't wear the garment because it was just too itchy and too big. So probably the way to go here is still to keep the single color and maybe stick with the original idea of making cables, or perhaps a gunsays. That is something that I am overdue to make for sure. Anyway, this is the final acquisition. Now, this has been my week so far. It was my birthday on the 5th of June, and thank you so much for all of you that wish me happy birthday. It was an amazing day. I was a little bit under the weather, to be honest, but I managed to visit our Bloom Festival here in Dublin, which is a big festival about Irishness and Irish products and gardening and food and everything and anything Irish that you can imagine. It was hosted in the bigger park of Dublin, which is the Phoenix Park, which, by the way, is the biggest walled park in Europe. I would say in the world, but I think in Europe. And it was absolutely beautiful. Really, really enjoyed it. I was astonished about the amount of Irish-owned business and Irish products and anything that is Irish. I never seen something like that, to be honest. And we all hear in the news every day, if you are living in Ireland, that the economy is doing really bad. And cost of living is super high. It's the worst inflation in Europe. What else? The climate change is impacting our coast and our agriculture. There's no money left in the country. What other complaints did I hear lately? The housing crisis. If you have a house, if you own a house or kind of sort of rent an apartment, you are the most lucky person in the world. Homelessness is raising crazy times, and so on and so forth. So, seeing so many small businesses, young businesses, and Irish brands really warmed my heart, and means that although we tend to focus on very dark and stark economical and societal situation, the country is still thriving, and there's a lot of businesses that are growing and that are coming up. And this makes a lot of, gives me a lot of hope as well for my very small art business. I've seen there a lot of artists showing their artworks. And yeah, I will probably think about applying for next year. It was just an amazing experience. What are the plans for the future? Well, I will be on holidays coming up, so I don't really intend to work on too much knitting. I will probably bring with me a couple of very small works and knit up on the train or the plane if I have time or if I feel like, just because I kind of need a complete break from anything and anything related to work and related to doing stuff. So I will bring with me just a very small project, a small sketchbook, and just relax and not thinking about producing all the time. That is the goal, although I know that won't happen because I probably will end up knitting all the time or drawing and painting anyway. You know that yourself. If you are a crafter, you can't stop. We will be visiting Spain, a couple of cities, Donostia on the top and Bilbao, and just enjoy the beautiful sun and food, come back to Ireland, and then, yeah, that's basically the plan for the future. Another thing that is coming up is are a couple of designs. I am going on with the sock collection for the buildings of the Grand Canal, and I'm kind of at the stage of penciling down my next project, and I want to ditch color work a little bit. I got so much pleasure to that on Maple Ridge socks that I want to explore a little bit the world of textures. Something is coming up for sure. Another interesting things that happened is that I got contacted by a yarn store here in Ireland, and they so kindly asked me if I would love to teach a workshop in their shop, and I said yes, although I have no clue how to do that. And if they are watching this video, I'm really sorry, I will be prepared for sure. So I was a teacher before. I taught music for years, so I know how to teach. I don't know if I am the right person to teach knitting, but for that workshop I am preparing a pattern that is probably going to be a mitten, a pair of mittens. Super easy, like the traditional Norwegian Nordic type of design, but with a big Irish twist. So I charted out a pattern last week, and I'm currently try to figure out the best yarns that we can use, and how it needs up, to try it and to see if it works, if it's easy enough for any level of experience. Once that's done, I will have definitely a meeting with the shop owners and discuss the nitty-gritty. I really like the idea of making or teaching people how to make a pair of mittens, because this will give not just the skills but an actual object, and they can replicate that pattern with any other pair of mittens patterns that they can find on the internet. So it's something that I'm kind of passionate about. We'll see what it can bring. I need to understand the level of confidence in me and the level of expertise of the people. If someone is able to knit and purl and increase and decrease, that's basically the game. It will be a little bit tricky to make people understand color work if someone has never done color work before, but we'll see. Anyway, that's basically it. I've spoken for way too long. Happy Pride to you all. If you're part of the LGBT community, have a blast, have a wonderful time. If you are not part of the LGBT community, but you are an ally, have a wonderful time as well, and remember to support all our LGBTQA+ friends and show the colors. Bye bye!